has just arrived. We're talking about the marbleized star maps before. I mentioned that Count Fabriano would appear, and he has finally made it. And we were talking earlier about the marbleized and planetized star map. This pointing up the fact the universe is in motion, that nothing is standing still. And we've captured the galactic flow in the star map and the liquid flow in the marbling. The old bookbinding craft of floating oil paint on water. And here with me is the master marbleizer, Count Fabriano, Cove, his real name. And he's been marbling. How long have you been marbleizing?
Oh, 10 years now, 10, 15 years.
And you primarily do it on fabric, but you can marbleize on any medium, cardboard, glass, metal, whatever, and different pigments. This is an oil-based paint. And he is now compiling a book about not only marbling, but the whole aspect of the flow of everything, the flow of the liquid, the flow of
the wave theory through space.
Wave theory, but in the sand, in the in rock formations,
right, exactly.
in wood,
right.
And you know, we don't deal in astrology at all, but the stars have surely affected my life because here I am graphing them, and other nuances, you know, the full moon and all that. But tides, there's tidal waves. You know, the tides, the gravitational force of the moon and the sun affect the tides. Well, there are also tides in the air, ripples in the air,
and vortices in space.
Right.
That will eventually we'll be traveling on, using the magnetic forces to travel on the waves, which are basically represented on our artistic statement of marbleized star maps.
Yes, well, I have my theory about that is that all the gravitational forces meet like in a jigsaw puzzle, and that you'd ride along the edges of the jigsaw puzzle. You know, you control the forces of gravity
the interface.
That's right, and that's the way you'd have to move through it, or you could cut straight through it.
Well, that's how basically marble, the separation of the color in the marble is done by density, and that there is a density interface between each of the colors, and as you float the oil paints on top of water and you propagate a wave through the liquid, the wave goes through, and what you're seeing is basically another map. If you had a universe and you cut it in half, in 4-dimension you cut it in half, and you look down on it and made it into 2-dimension, then this is what it would be. It would be a map of the motion that you have, so that we're combining two maps of instantaneous map of time and a galactic flow.
Yeah, and while you're talking, maybe they could cut in that motion, the actual marbling. We have video of the actual marbling process in hand. Show them your book here. This is your book that he has that tries to describe the whole deal of wave. Here's weather, the waves
exactly,
and the weather.
Exactly, a wave formation. The fronts are basically a vortice of a 3-dimensional vortice. What we're talking about is a 4-dimensional concept of a 3-dimensional model represented in 2-dimension, very, very flat. It goes from, very simply, right, arbitrarily, from weather to a galactic flow. As you see here, there's different representations of galactic flows, including 2 galaxies meeting on different planes, and this is a weather pattern and a theory of ellipses within ellipse.
Mm-hmm. Now, I attended this symposium in Aspen of theoretical physicists who were trying to describe mathematical formulas that cause like vortices and suns and things like that. But Count Fabriano here can throw out anything you'd want. He can actually, his art has developed to such an extent over the years that he is able to tell you what kind of a wave you're going to get just by his throwing it out, waving it, and blowing it with certain things. And I thought maybe by digitalizing and using the computer, it could analyze and solve all these theoretical mathematicians' problems instantaneously, because they're trying to get a formula to say, why does this act like this, you know, and why is this?
We have the working model right here. This is the actual working model of all wave theory possible.
Well, there's so much more in this book.
Yes, look at it. See, the art of marbling has started, who knows when, but we have examples from Germany in 1500, and it goes back to Japan in 900. Oh yes, here, this is when
Jupiter.
Jupiter, right, exactly. 5 years before Jupiter came out, this was a representation of a planet with a moon coming across. And as you see, the patterns which are created are actually what we saw later on when we photographed Jupiter. It's an amazing process. We'll find now that as we get into space, as we get out to where David is charting the map, you'll find that space itself is made of vortices, and that not that the planets are the surface of the planets reflect the same marbling process, but the space around it are overlapping densities of waves. And this is what the marbleized star map. You remember the Star Trek convention when we hung huge,
Oh, yeah.
huge
Right,
20 by
yeah.
40 pieces of
Yeah. We had the whole ballroom of the Oakland Coliseum, or the Oakland Auditorium. That's what it was, the Oakland Auditorium. He had 14-foot square marbleized fabric pieces, and we did this all. We built a tank out of plastic and out in this yard, and threw you just threw the marbling right on, and
here's a piece of cardboard coming through. This is a match, and as you wave the cardboard through the match, the vortices of currents are reflected. And these other black and white photos are from a book called Creative Chaos, where all water is represented through this wave theory. And it goes on. There are people all over the country doing this marbling. And here's a girl from Santa Fe, a particular art of hers. And this is what I'm doing now, is collecting and visiting places where it's being done. It's being done on pottery, on balloons.
and this is an ancient process. This
Ancient
marbling
process.
has been going on. How long is it? Give
No one
us a
knows.
rough
Well,
history of it.
every like I say, the most recent idea that they have evidence of it in Asia in 800, but most
Well, you'd see marbling in your coffee. You see the
exactly,
stuff
yeah,
rolling around.
the oil on top of a puddle as you cross the street,
right in the gas
a
station.
glaze on top of pottery,
Yeah.
or a super ball.
And the interference diffraction phenomena that's caused, like when you see the shimmering ahead or over the radiator, the thing, and it's
combing. What you're talking about is combing. You lay down, you start a pattern, a very symmetrical, coherent pattern, and with the use of a comb, small wires, you can create patterns such as this peacock combing, as I grabbed from your table. And another interference would be as if I had straight lines of these color and then blew air from the top. The Arab word for this is called wind and water. So you have the water and you have the force of the wind.
When a car goes by a window, and you can see reflected on the other window almost all the grains of the glass on the wall.
The moire pattern, reflected moire pattern.
Well, no, I see a grainy substance, but I'm getting out to the shadow band phenomena in solar eclipses. When there's a total solar eclipse, just before and after totality, the air begins just like it's shimmering, just like when you see the light diffracted through the radiator. And superimposed on this shimmering are light and dark bands, flowing bands, sometimes spaced wide apart, sometimes closely apart. It's like a wave that comes up on a beach and goes away. Etched in the sand are these little ridges, you see. But sometimes there are ridges going over ridges, and wherever the nodes meet, then it cancels it out. Like the two wires on the wherever they cross, it looks like there's nothing there. There's and the classic experiment is where you have a light bulb behind a flat board. You put one hole in it or two holes in it. The reflections on the wall will all be disappeared when the thing. And that's all interference, diffraction, and this is the flow of it all.
It's the key to the universe.
Right.
Before you go away, I've always wanted to do this, to be on TV.
No, it's gone.
No, it's not a flash. I won't burn out. I've always wanted to do this. That's amazing. I'm photographing you. Who's behind there? Originally, this book that I'm doing, a research book on marble, was intended as a special effects presentation for Carl Sagan and his TV show. And David and I went down to Los Angeles, and we set up a marbling tank right on the street in La Cienega, and did this marbling on the street where we would marble, and we videoed it. And along with it was this book of explaining the art of marbling. Marbling may be defined as the art of arranging moist colors on an elastic surface that they will either or can be made readily to assume fantastic sundry forms. Such colors being transferred onto fabric, onto paper, onto books. It's been used for years as end pages. David was my #1 assistant when we would print in Berkeley. Oh, here's a wonderful example of an overlapping moire of marbling going over on top of marbling. And the flipping of it, making it anti-symmetrical.
Well, lift
And
that up for you can
Sure,
see that.
sure.
Yeah, this is
Go ahead and hold it up.
Okay, here, I'll just hold this right up here so that everybody in TV land can see it.
video
Right here.
land.
Video land, that's right, video. There is a star named TV, isn't there, David? Where is
What?
it on
Oh yeah, there is a star on the
Star
sky
TV.
named TV.
Well,
It's a
fun.
variable star that the people who find them or name them can label their own, and sometimes they become dogmatically designated as such, and sometimes
Is it, wait a minute,
somebody
is it
changes
true, is it true you hold more, I was just saying how David W. Teske of Manchester, Iowa, has more copyrights on the heavens than anyone alive, and I've heard him say that he actually owns the heavens. Since he has copyrighted the image of the heavens, and no one else can use the image, that he is being blasphemous and saying that he owns the heavens.
Nobody can come to the heavens but by me.
That's right. Every time everyone looks at the heavens, they owe you, right?
Right.
Well, I'll tell you an interesting story about copyright. If you think that you can use this image, David Teske sold to the Oakland Museum star maps. They took a star map and removed the names, used 1/3 of it, turned it upside down, and created this basically what most people would think was an abstract dot pattern. Well, David's walking down the street and he sees this dot pattern as a background for a poster advertising the Oakland Museum's concert series. Well, knowing the stars, he realizes that this is his image, and he sues the Oakland Museum for copyright infringement. And I think it cost him $1,200 or $1,500 to sue, and you won $1,200. Is that what it was?
No.
It was something like that, wasn't
No,
it?
what the purpose is holding on to your copyright. You see, the way the thing is that you have 100 days to complain and a year to sue if you're going to do something about it. And the classic case is aspirin. Bayer owned that, but they didn't complain enough when it was used before.